The sound of the gavel echoed like thunder in the courtroom. My husband leaned back in his chair with a smug smile, twirling the pen between his fingers as if the divorce papers were nothing more than a joke. He signed his name with a flourish, his eyes darting toward me with mocking satisfaction. I felt my chest tighten, not from the end of our marriage. I had already cried enough tears over that, but from the way he looked at me, as if I were some pathetic loser he had finally discarded. He whispered under his breath, just loud enough for me to hear, "Good riddance." My palms trembled, but I didn't let a single tear fall. I had promised myself I would not give him the satisfaction of watching me break. The judge cleared his throat, preparing to speak, and that's when something happened that changed everything. Because before the ink on those papers could dry, the judge pulled out a second envelope, one sealed with my late father's crest. My husband's arrogant smirk froze. I could almost hear the blood drain from his face. That moment, the moment the judge began reading my father's will out loud, is burned into my memory forever. But before I tell you exactly what happened next, let me welcome you into my story. My name is Veronica, and this isn't just the story of a broken marriage. This is the story of betrayal, hidden truths, and the shocking twist that no one, especially not my husband, ever saw coming. You see, when you share your life with someone, you think you know them. You think you can predict what they'll do, how they'll react, even how far they'll go to hurt you. But the truth? You never really know the depths of someone's cruelty until they think they've won. That day in court, as I sat across from the man who once swore to love me forever, I felt like I was staring at a stranger. His coldness, his arrogance, his utter lack of remorse. It should have crushed me. Instead, it lit a fire inside me. Because what he didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that my father had left behind more than memories. He had left behind secrets that would bring my husband's world crashing down in ways he never expected. And as the judge's lips formed those first shocking words, I realized that this story, my story, was only just beginning. If you were sitting in that courtroom, watching your spouse mock you as they signed divorce papers, what would you have done? Would you fight back or would you walk away? Welcome back, my friends. If this story's already pulling you in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means the world. And tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. Now, let's dive back in. My name is Veronica, and if you had asked anyone just a few years ago, they would have told you I had the perfect life. A successful career, a handsome husband, and a family name that carried weight in our town. People saw the polished exterior, the pretty dresses, the dinner parties, the smiling photos, and assumed I was living a fairy tale. But fairy tales are lies. Behind closed doors, my life was unraveling long before we stepped into that courtroom. I met Nathan, my now ex-husband, when I was 24. He was charming in that disarming way that makes you feel like the most important person in the room. He noticed the little things, like the way I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was nervous, or how I hated my coffee too sweet. He made me laugh at a time when my life felt unbearably heavy, just a year after my father's first heart attack. My father, Henry, adored him at first. Nathan had this polished, ambitious energy that seemed to promise stability. My mother, Clara, was more cautious, though. She would pull me aside after dinners and whisper, "He smiles too much when he talks about money, Veronica. Watch him." I laughed it off. I told myself she was just being protective. I wanted so badly to believe Nathan's love was genuine. But little by little, cracks began to show. Nathan became obsessed with appearances. The house, the cars, the circles we mingled in. He wanted me to host parties for people I didn't even like, to wear dresses that looked expensive enough for his taste. And when I pushed back, when I tried to hold on to the simple values my father taught me, his temper showed. Not in the form of shouting or violence. No, Nathan was more calculated than that. His weapon was mockery. He belittled me in subtle ways in front of friends, behind closed doors, even when no one else was around. He chipped away at my confidence until I barely recognized myself. I stayed because I thought I could fix it. I stayed because I believed in vows, in commitment, in the promise we made. And most of all, I stayed because I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing my father. He had given me everything. A childhood filled with love, opportunities he worked his whole life to provide. The thought of telling him I had married a man who treated me like a trophy, not a partner, felt like betraying his trust. But my father, he wasn't blind. One evening, months before his death, he sat me down in his study. The air smelled of the leather-bound books he loved, and the faint smoke from his pipe. He placed his hand over mine and said, "Veronica, strength isn't staying where you're unloved. It's knowing when to walk away." Those words haunted me, especially after he passed. And as Nathan grew bolder in his cruelty, mocking my ambitions, ignoring my feelings, I realized my father had seen the truth before I did. Still, I didn't walk away. Not until the betrayals became undeniable. Not until I discovered things that left me questioning whether I ever knew Nathan at all. And that's what led us to that courtroom. To the day he signed those divorce papers with a smirk. He thought he had won. He thought he'd broken me down to nothing. But my father's will, those sealed pages the judge held in his hands, would prove that Nathan had underestimated me and underestimated my father's foresight. Because, as I would soon learn, my father had prepared for this moment long before either of us knew it was coming. It all started one rainy Thursday evening, just a few months after my father's funeral. I remember the sound of the storm pounding against the windows as I sat alone in the kitchen. Nathan had promised he'd be home for dinner, but the clock had already passed 10. Cold food sat untouched on the table. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. I should have been used to it by then. The late nights, the vague excuses about meetings and clients. But that night felt different, emptier. So, against my better judgment, I decided to wait. Hours later, headlights flashed across the driveway. I peeked through the curtain just in time to see Nathan stumbling out of the car with a woman I'd never seen before. She laughed loudly, clinging to his arm like she belonged there. He didn't even bother to hush her voice as they walked up to the door. I froze. My heart thudded in my ears. For a split second, I thought about running upstairs, pretending I'd been asleep. Pretending I hadn't seen what I just saw. But something inside me snapped. When the door swung open, I was standing there, arms crossed, staring directly at him. His smile faltered for only a second before he slipped into that familiar arrogance. "Oh, Veronica," he said casually, as if he'd just come back from a business trip. "This is Marlene. She's a colleague. We were working late." Marlene's perfume hit me before her words did. Sweet, heavy, unmistakably intimate. She smirked, brushing her hand against his shoulder like they shared a secret. My stomach turned. "Working late?" I asked, my voice trembling, but steady enough to cut through the air. "At midnight? With lipstick on your collar." Nathan chuckled, actually chuckled. "You're overreacting as usual. Don't be dramatic." That was his favorite word for me, dramatic. He used it every time he wanted to dismiss my pain. Every time he wanted me to doubt my own eyes, my own instincts. But this time I didn't doubt. I felt the truth settle in my bones. He wasn't just cruel, he was unfaithful. The next morning, while he slept off whatever lies he planned to tell me, I sat at the kitchen table with my father's words echoing in my mind. Strength isn't staying where you're unloved. It's knowing when to walk away. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine life without Nathan. No more insults disguised as jokes. No more lonely dinners waiting for footsteps that never came. No more pretending that what we had was love. That was the day I made a decision. I called Sophia, my childhood friend and the only person I trusted completely. She was a lawyer, sharp, determined, and fiercely protective of me. When I told her what I had seen, she didn't hesitate. "Veronica," she said firmly, "you deserve better than this. Let's end it. I'll handle the paperwork." Filing for divorce felt both terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because Nathan wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat quietly. Liberating because, for the first time in years, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. But what I didn't know then, what none of us could have known, was that my father had already written me into a battle far greater than just divorce. His will, sealed and waiting in the judge's hands, would expose truths Nathan had spent years hiding. Truths that would turn Nathan's smug smile into the mask of a desperate man. The moment the divorce papers were filed, Nathan's mask began to crack. At first, he tried charm. He showed up with flowers I didn't want, cooking my favorite pasta like nothing had happened. "We can work through this," he said, flashing that practiced smile. But when I didn't melt the way I used to, his tone shifted. "You'll never make it without me, Veronica," he hissed one night. "You think people respect you? They only respect your last name. Without me, you're nothing." It was almost laughable, him trying to take credit for my father's legacy, as if marrying me had made him the man he pretended to be. But deep down, his words stung. Years of mockery had left scars I couldn't erase overnight. Sophia became my anchor. She reminded me of the woman I used to be, the one who studied late into the night, who fought for promotions, who believed her worth came from within, not from a man's validation. She urged me to document everything. His insults, his infidelity, even the way he tried to intimidate me. But Nathan wasn't just cruel, he was calculated. He started turning friends against me. Mutual acquaintances who once greeted me warmly began avoiding me at events. I'd hear whispers, lies he had spread about me being unstable, emotional, even unfaithful. One evening, Sophia stormed into my apartment, slamming her briefcase onto the table. "He's trying to drag you through the mud in court," she warned. "He's painting himself as the victim." I laughed bitterly. "The victim? After everything he's done?" Sophia leaned closer, her eyes blazing. "That's his game. He wants you rattled. Don't let him win." Despite her confidence, I couldn't help but feel fear gnawing at me. Nathan had resources, connections, and a charm that fooled people easily. What if the court believed him? What if I walked away with nothing, not even my dignity? And yet there was something I clung to, something Nathan didn't know. My father's will. Though I hadn't seen the contents, I remembered his strange words in those last days. "Veronica, I've made sure you'll be protected, no matter what happens." At the time, I thought he meant emotionally. But when my mother mentioned that he had updated his will before he passed, a spark of hope lit inside me. Still, hope wasn't enough to shield me from Nathan's venom. He grew bolder with every confrontation. One night, after a particularly heated argument, he leaned so close I could feel his breath on my face. "You think your precious daddy's money will save you?" he sneered. "You're weak, Veronica. Always have been. I'm going to take everything from you." His words echoed long after he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. For hours, I sat on the floor, shaking, not from fear of losing material things, but from realizing how far he was willing to go. Nathan didn't just want freedom. He wanted destruction. And yet, even in my darkest moments, my father's words kept coming back. Strength isn't staying where you're unloved. It's knowing when to walk away. But what Nathan didn't realize was that walking away wasn't the end for me. It was the beginning. Because the will would show him exactly how wrong he was. The day of our first court hearing arrived like a storm cloud looming over me. I woke up before sunrise, unable to sleep, my stomach twisting with nerves. Sophia met me outside the courthouse, her presence steady and grounding. "You're ready for this," she assured me, squeezing my hand. "No matter what he throws at us, you're stronger than him." I nodded, though my confidence felt paper-thin. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Nathan strolled in, perfectly pressed suit, smug smile plastered across his face. He looked like a man certain he was about to win. He even winked at me, as though mocking me for daring to challenge him. The judge began proceedings, and for the first hour, it was exactly as Sophia had warned. Nathan's lawyer painted me as emotional, unstable, a woman who had overreacted to her husband's late nights and professional relationships. They hinted at financial irresponsibility, claimed I had squandered opportunities Nathan had provided. I wanted to scream at the lies, but Sophia squeezed my wrist under the table. "Stay calm," she whispered. "Trust me." And then it happened. The judge cleared his throat. "Before we continue, there is a matter regarding the estate of the late Mr. Henry Whitmore." My heart skipped a beat. My father. He pulled out a thick, sealed envelope, stamped with my father's crest. Nathan's confident expression flickered for the first time. "As executor of Mr. Whitmore's estate," the judge continued, "I am required to read a section of his last will and testament into record, as it directly impacts these proceedings." The courtroom went silent. I could hear the faint tick of the clock on the wall, the shuffle of papers, even the nervous cough of someone in the back row. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "I've made sure you'll be protected." The judge began to read aloud. "To my beloved daughter, Veronica, I leave full ownership of the Whitmore family estate, including all business holdings, assets, and trusts. Furthermore, I hereby revoke any prior agreements or claims that may have been extended to her spouse, Nathan Whitmore." Gasps rippled through the room. Nathan's face drained of color. His jaw clenched as he gripped the edge of the table. But the judge wasn't finished. "In addition," he read, his voice steady, "should my daughter ever face betrayal within her marriage, I direct that all financial benefits, accounts, and privileges extended to her spouse through our family name be immediately terminated." I felt tears sting my eyes, not from sadness but from awe. My father had seen this coming. He had known Nathan's character long before I admitted it to myself, and he had left behind a shield to protect me. Nathan shot to his feet. "This is outrageous," he barked, slamming his palm on the table. "He can't just—" The judge's gavel struck. "Sit down, Mr. Whitmore. These are legally binding documents." For the first time, Nathan looked small. His arrogance, his swagger, it all faltered as the reality sank in. He hadn't just underestimated me. He had underestimated my father. Sophia leaned in, whispering in my ear, "This changes everything." And it did. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't fighting alone. My father's love reached beyond the grave, protecting me even when I couldn't protect myself. But what I didn't know then was that this revelation was only the beginning. Nathan wasn't the type to back down quietly. If anything, this humiliation would push him to strike harder, darker, and more desperate than ever before. If you discovered a hidden protection your parent had left for you, one that could completely turn the tables, how would you feel? Relieved or pressured by the responsibility that came with it? If I thought Nathan would retreat after the judge read my father's will, I was wrong. Humiliation only made him more dangerous. In the weeks that followed, he unleashed every weapon he had left. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from acquaintances. "Is it true you cheated on him?" "I heard you're unstable. Veronica, are you okay?" Lies, all of them, spread like wildfire. Nathan painted himself as the poor, heartbroken husband, abandoned by his cold, ungrateful wife. He charmed reporters into writing sympathetic articles, even staged photos of himself looking devastated in public. It was a performance, and the world bought tickets. But the cruelest blow came when he went after the one thing that mattered most to me, my reputation at the Whitmore Foundation, the charity my father had built and entrusted me to run. One morning, I walked into the office only to be met with cold stares. Whispers swirled as I passed, and when I reached my desk, a letter was waiting. It was a petition, signed by several board members, requesting my removal as director. The accusations: mismanagement of funds, emotional instability, and negligence. I felt my knees buckle. Nathan had poisoned them against me. I locked myself in my office, staring at the walls as panic closed in. Everything I had fought to preserve, my father's legacy, his life's work, was slipping through my fingers. And Nathan was the one pulling the strings. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the silence pressing down like a weight. The city lights outside flickered, but inside, everything felt dark. I thought of my father, of the promises he made to protect me, and for the first time, I wondered if even he had underestimated Nathan's cruelty. I picked up the phone and called Sophia. My voice cracked when she answered. "He's destroying me, Sophia. Piece by piece. I don't know how much more I can take." There was a pause. Then her voice came steady and strong. "Veronica, listen to me. This is exactly what he wants, for you to give up. But you're stronger than this. You have truth on your side, and I will not let him ruin you. Not while I'm here." Her words should have lifted me, but that night they barely kept me afloat. I curled into bed, clutching my father's old watch to my chest, whispering a prayer into the darkness. Still, despair clung to me. I began to question everything. Had I been foolish to file for divorce? Was I doomed to spend my life fighting Nathan's shadow? Was I truly strong enough to survive this storm? The breaking point came a few days later. I received an anonymous envelope with photos inside, grainy images of me leaving dinner with Sophia, but the captions scrawled beneath them were vile. "Veronica caught cheating with her lawyer." I dropped the photos onto the table, my stomach turning. This was Nathan's work. He wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. He was trying to isolate me from the only person who stood by me. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered into the empty room. "What more do you want from me, Nathan? Haven't you taken enough?" For the first time, I felt truly hopeless. I had nothing left but a stack of lies and a heart so heavy it threatened to break. And yet, somewhere in that despair, a quiet voice stirred inside me. My father's voice. Strength isn't staying where you're unloved. It's knowing when to walk away. But this time I realized walking away wasn't enough. I had to fight back. I just didn't know how yet. The photos were the last straw. Nathan thought he could humiliate me into silence, but instead, he lit a fire I didn't know still burned inside me. The morning after receiving that envelope, I looked at myself in the mirror. Red eyes, tired face, shoulders slumped under the weight of everything. For a moment, I barely recognized the woman staring back. But then I whispered aloud, "This isn't me. This isn't who my father raised." I remembered the way he used to hold my hand as a child, his voice steady and warm. "Veronica, when people try to break you, it's because they fear your strength." I refused to let Nathan win by destroying me. I called Sophia and asked her to meet me at my father's study, the one room in our family estate Nathan had never been allowed to touch. Dust clung to the shelves, but the room smelled faintly of cedar and old books my father sent, still lingering like a quiet blessing. Sophia spread out the legal documents across the oak desk while I ran my fingers along the spines of my father's journals. "Nathan's attacks are getting bolder," she said, "but we can use that recklessness against him. We need evidence, something that proves his deceit beyond question." As if guided, my hand stopped at a leather-bound ledger tucked behind the others. When I pulled it free, dust filled the air. Inside were detailed notes, my father's records of financial transactions. But not just his. There were entries about Nathan. Sophia's eyes widened as she skimmed the pages. "Veronica, these are transfers. Large sums. To Nathan. Hidden under the guise of business expenses." My chest tightened. My father had been tracking Nathan's greed all along. He had left a paper trail, a weapon Nathan never imagined we'd find. "This," Sophia whispered, almost reverently, "this is exactly what we need. Proof of his betrayal. Proof of his theft." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope surge through me. My father hadn't just left me protected in his will. He had left me the tools to finish this fight. That evening, Sophia and I sat by the fireplace strategizing. The glow of the flames danced across her determined face as she laid out our plan. We'll submit this ledger to the court. Not only will it prove Nathan siphoned money, but it will show he tried to manipulate the estate for his own gain. Once this comes out, his credibility will be destroyed. I leaned back, clutching the journal to my chest. It's like my father knew I'd need this someday. He's still guiding me even now. Sophia smiled softly. And you're finally ready to fight with everything you have. The next few days were a blur of preparation. I gathered statements from colleagues who had seen Nathan's cruelty firsthand. Sophia pieced together timelines, highlighting every inconsistency in Nathan's stories. We built a case brick by brick, each piece stronger than the last. But the turning point wasn't just about strategy. It was about me. One evening, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights twinkling below. For the first time in months, I felt a calm determination settle over me. Nathan had tried to convince me I was weak, but the truth was the opposite. He had only revealed just how strong I could be. And when I pictured his smug smile crumbling under the weight of his own lies, I knew I was ready. The next hearing wasn't just going to be about divorce. It was going to be the reckoning Nathan never saw coming. The day of the final hearing arrived, and this time I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. No trembling hands, no wavering steps. I wasn't the same broken woman Nathan had mocked at the beginning of this ordeal. Sophia walked beside me, her briefcase clutched firmly, the ledger inside like a sword waiting to be unsheathed. Nathan was already there, lounging in his chair with false confidence. But I noticed something different this time. His eyes darted more often, his smirk less steady. He could sense something was coming, though he had no idea what. The judge opened proceedings, and once again, Nathan's lawyer launched into rehearsed speeches about my instability and lack of responsibility. I barely listened. My focus was on the moment Sophia rose to her feet. "Your Honor," she said firmly, sliding the ledger onto the table, "we have new evidence to submit into record. Evidence that proves not only my client's integrity, but also Mr. Whitmore's repeated acts of deception and theft." The courtroom stilled. Nathan shifted uncomfortably as the judge took the book, flipping through its pages. His brows furrowed deeper with every line he read. "These entries," Sophia continued, her voice ringing clear, "detail a series of unauthorized transfers made by Mr. Whitmore during his marriage. Funds that originated from the Whitmore family estate were siphoned into personal accounts under false pretenses. Mr. Whitmore betrayed both his wife and her late father's trust." Gasps echoed around the room. Nathan's face flushed crimson. He slammed his fist on the table. "That's a lie. That book could have been fabricated." Sophia didn't flinch. "The handwriting matches financial records already on file, and we have corroborating bank statements to confirm every transaction. This is no fabrication, Your Honor. It's a confession in his own hand." The judge looked up sharply. "Mr. Whitmore, do you deny making these transactions?" Nathan opened his mouth, but for the first time, words failed him. He stammered, his usual confidence crumbling like sand. "This," the judge said slowly, "is a serious violation. Not only does it destroy your credibility in these proceedings, but it also raises potential grounds for criminal investigation." The room erupted into murmurs. Nathan paled, gripping the edge of the table as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. I sat perfectly still, my heart pounding, but my face calm. For so long, he had tried to break me, belittle me, make me doubt myself. And now it was him unraveling. Sophia pressed on. "Your Honor, we request that all of Mr. Whitmore's claims against my client be dismissed. Furthermore, given this evidence of misconduct, we ask that the court recognize Veronica Whitmore as the sole rightful owner of her father's estate, free from her husband's interference." The judge nodded gravely. "I will take this request under immediate consideration. But I must say, The evidence speaks clearly. Mr. Whitmore, you have not only attempted to deceive your wife, but also this court. Such behavior cannot and will not be tolerated. Nathan shot to his feet, his mask shattered completely, replaced with raw fury. You think you've won, Veronica? He spat, pointing at me across the room. You're nothing without me. Nothing. I stood slowly, my voice steady as it had never been before. No, Nathan. I'm finally everything without you. Silence fell. The words hung in the air like a verdict of their own. The judge banged the gavel. Order. This court will reconvene after recess for my final ruling. But let it be clear, Mr. Whitmore, your conduct has already condemned you. As Nathan sank back into his seat, defeated and trembling, I felt a swell of emotions, relief, triumph, grief for the years I had wasted. But most of all, I felt my father's presence. His plan had worked. His love had carried me through. And Nathan was about to face the consequences of every cruel word, every betrayal, every calculated act of destruction. When the judge returned after recess, the courtroom was silent. Nathan sat slouched in his chair, his once polished exterior crumbling under the weight of exposure. His lawyer whispered frantically in his ear, but he shook her off, sweat glistening on his forehead. The judge's voice carried like steel. After reviewing the submitted evidence, I hereby dismiss all claims made by Mr. Whitmore against his wife, Veronica Whitmore. Furthermore, in light of the financial misconduct revealed, I grant sole ownership of the Whitmore estate assets and holdings to Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, your actions warrant further investigation, and you'll be referred to the appropriate authorities. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Nathan's mouth opened, but no sound came. He had lost, completely undeniably. Sophia squeezed my hand. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My father's will had not only protected me, it had delivered justice. As the gavel struck for the last time, Nathan erupted. This isn't over. You'll regret this, Veronica. The bailiff moved toward him as the judge snapped, That's enough, Mr. Whitmore. But I didn't flinch. I looked him straight in the eye, calm and steady. No, Nathan, I said softly but firmly. The only person living with regret now is you. Those words were my closure. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air felt lighter, cleaner. Reporters swarmed. Microphones shoved toward me. Questions flying. How does it feel to win? Do you have any comment about your husband's downfall? I simply replied, the truth always wins. My father taught me that, and today proved him right. Sophia beamed at me with pride, and for the first time in years I felt truly free. Nathan's downfall was swift. News outlets that once painted him as a victim quickly turned on him, exposing his lies and financial crimes. Business partners cut ties. Friends he had manipulated vanished overnight. His name became a warning, not a badge of charm. The man who once mocked me as nothing without him was now stripped of everything he had built on deceit. That was his karma, not just losing me, but losing the mask he had worn for so long. As for me, I returned to the Whitmore Foundation with my head held high. The board who doubted me apologized, their signatures of betrayal now meaningless against the truth. I restructured the charity, dedicating it to helping women find strength in the face of betrayal and hardship. Every project, every life touched, felt like a tribute to my father's legacy. One evening, months later, I stood in the study again. The fire crackled, and my father's ledger rested on the shelf where I'd found it. I whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, Dad. You saw the truth before I did. You saved me." And though the room was silent, I felt him there, in the strength that had carried me, in the justice that had been served, in the peace that finally filled my heart. This was no longer the story of a woman broken by betrayal. It was the story of a woman who rose from it, who reclaimed her voice, her dignity, and her future. And Nathan, His story ended exactly as it should, in the ruins of his own making. What do you think? Was Nathan's downfall enough justice? Or do you believe true karma is living the rest of his life knowing he lost the woman who once loved him? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you'll surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.